Good morning, class. Today we are going to start looking at the musculoskeletal system. We're going to kind of talk about what are the functions of muscles and some of the major muscles in the human body and how they are named. So as we go through, just want you to start thinking about what are some functions of muscles and take a couple minutes to think about that. The musculoskeletal system consists of bones, that's the skeletal system, and then joints and muscles that provide form, support, and stability to the body, thus giving us the ability to move. So we've already talked about the skeletal system being the bones. Now we're going to talk about muscles, and then after that we'll talk about joints. So below are diagrams of smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and skeletal. And on your screen you can only see the smooth muscle, but we're going to just take a couple minutes to talk about the difference between the three types of muscle. So smooth muscle, it's basically the muscle that surrounds your internal organs. So key thing there is internal organs, including things like hair follicles, genital, digestive tract, that kind of stuff. So smooth muscles are involuntary, meaning that you don't have a choice whether to move them or not. They just move or contract on their own. Cardiac muscle is just as it sounds. It's a muscle surrounding the heart. So it's only found in the heart. And cardiac muscle is also involuntary. You have no control over it. It's directed by the autonomic nervous system. Skeletal muscles, they are the type of muscles that are attached to bones. So they can attach to bones by tendons. So remember, tendons attach muscle to bone. They are the most prevalent type of muscle in the human body. So about 30 to 40% of our body weight is muscle. So therefore, the more muscle you have in your body, the more that you're going to weigh. Skeletal muscles are voluntary, so we can choose when to move them. Our brain tells us to. So if I want to go and kick a soccer ball, my brain has to send that signal down my spinal cord to the appropriate muscles. Skeletal muscles are referred to as striated or striped because under a microscope they kind of have dark and light stripes. The skeletal muscular system supports the body, so it allows us to stay in an upright position. It also protects vital organs like the heart, the liver, and it allows for a storage system for things like calcium, phosphorus, and the blood components. So it's made up of bones, muscles, connective tissue all together, and the bones themselves are bound tightly together with other bones through ligaments. So tendons were muscle to bone, whereas ligaments are bone to bone. We always have cartilage at the end of bones because cartilage prevents the bones from grinding against each other. So as soon as your cartilage starts to go away or deplete, then bones start rubbing on bone, and that can actually be very painful. Next, we're going to look at three different types of muscle contraction. So concentric contraction. So if you're doing a bicep curl, when you go into the curl, that's the shortening of a muscle, so that's the concentric phase. Then when you move your arm back out to a straight position, that's the lengthening phase, and that's eccentric. And isometric contraction is something like pushing against a wall where you're not moving at all. Muscles can be named in several ways, and a key way to remember this is by the term lad snore. Ladsnor. So on your screen you can only see action of the muscle. I'll post the PowerPoint again so you can see them all. But L stands for location of the muscle. So whether it is anterior or posterior, for example, tibialis anterior, meaning it's on the tibia to the front. We also have tibialis posterior, which is on the tibia to the back. A stands for action of the muscle. Muscles can flex, they can extend. So flexor carpi ulnaris is a muscle that's a flexor of your hands, and it's on the ulna. So flexor carpi ulnaris. We also have extensor carpi ulnaris. Just so that you know, from anatomical position, the flexors of your arm are anterior and the extensors of your arm are posterior. D stands for direction of fibers. So fibers can be rectus, they can be transversus, and they can be oblique. Rectus means straight up and down, so north to south. Transversus is horizontal, so east to west. And oblique means on an angle. So rectus abdominis, transversus abdominis, and your obliques. S stands for the shape of the muscle. So for example, you have a deltoid muscle, and it kind of looks like the Greek symbol delta. Your trapezius, which looks like a trapezoid. Those all get their name because of their shape. N stands for number of divisions or heads. So a bicep brachii has 2 heads, which means it has 2 points of attachment. Triceps brachii has 3 heads, so 3 points of attachments. O stands for origin, function, insertion, or points of attachment. So for example, the sternocleidomastoid, it starts at the sternum, goes to the clavicle, and then attaches at the mastoid process. So O is their origin, function, and insertion. And then R, the last one, stands for relative size. That's not in your PowerPoints, but it is another way they get their name, depending on whether they're magnus, which is super big, longus, which is long, and the last one is brevis. Some muscles get their name from that, meaning short. We have major muscle groups in the body. So the quadricep group is in your legs. So rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, medialis being on the inside, lateralis being to the outside. Those make up your quadricep group right in the front of your leg. Your rotator cuff group, that makes up part of the shoulder and the arm. The rotator cuff are your sit muscles. So subscapularis, that's in the front. Infraspinatus, supraspinatus. So infra meaning below the scapular spine, and supraspinatus is above the scapular spine. And then you have teres minor. So supraspinatus, infraspinatus, subscapularis, and teres minor make up the rotator cuff. Then you've got your abdominal muscles and your pectoral muscles. Working through, down your back, they are the opposites to your abdominal group, the erector spinae. Some people say spinae. Your rhomboids, your gluteals, which are in your butt or your glutes. Your hamstring group, which is at the back of your leg. So those are what's called your bicep femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus. And then lastly, you've got your calf muscles there, making up your soleus. It's your deep muscle because it looks like the solefish. And then above that is your other calf muscle called your gastrocnemius. Muscles pull, they never ever push. So the muscle primarily responsible for movement of a body part is referred to as an agonist muscle. So for example, we have your bicep curl. Say you're doing one of those. The agonist muscle is the bicep. And the antagonist in a bicep curl then would be the tricep. So always know that for every agonist, there's an antagonist. Then as we go through and we take a look at opposing muscle groups, I'll post this again so you can see because you can only see a few. But if we were to take a look at shoulder abduction, remember abduction means to move it away from the body. So as you're moving your arms away from your body, the prime mover is the deltoid muscle. So the one that's going to do shoulder adduction then, to add it back to your body, is the latissimus dorsi. So as you go through all these, try and make sure you can remember that for every prime mover or agonist, there's an antagonist. When skeletal muscle contracts, it causes movement of all the attached bones. The point where the muscle attaches is more stationary, and that's called the origin. So always remember that where that muscle attaches, it's mostly stationary, and it's called the origin. At the point where the muscle inserts, that's the most movable. So it's moved the most at the point of insertion. So for example, when you contract your bicep, you pull your forearm towards your shoulder. So you're pulling towards the origin. So now we know the insertion is one of the bones of the forearm on the radius called the radial tuberosity, and that's where we see the movement. That's all for this first half of learning about muscles. Tomorrow I'll give you some stuff on how to remember the names of muscles, but for today I just wanted you to kind of know how muscles were named and know that, when they push, they don't push, they just pull. Have a great day.